She sat in silence, day after day, her small pale hands pressed to the soft arms of her chair as if they were her only anchor to a world she couldn't see. At just 8 years old, Alina Kessler had already become the center of countless headlines, the silent heiress, the CEO's daughter who never spoke, blind and broken. The media had their theories, but none ever truly knew the depth of the pain behind her sealed lips. Her father, Adrian Kessler, CEO of Kessler Tech and one of the wealthiest men in the country, had spared no expense trying to fix what was wrong. Therapists from around the globe flew in. World-renowned psychologists tried every method. They whispered, sang, clapped, shouted. Some even cried in frustration. But Alina remained unmoved, expressionless, her blank gaze resting on nothing at all. To the world, she was mute. Blind. Possibly traumatized. To her father, she was a fragile porcelain doll in a mansion that echoed with loneliness and sorrow. What no one knew was that inside, Alina wasn't broken. She felt everything. Heard everything. The problem wasn't her. It was them. Their words were hollow. Their tone too careful. Their presence, fleeting. She knew they pitied her. And pity only pushed her deeper into her shell. Until one man, a complete stranger, whispered something no one else had the courage to say. That man was James Porter, a single father, former mechanic, current janitor at the Kessler corporate tower, and a man whose life had unraveled just as he tried to stitch it together for his own little girl. James hadn't come to Kessler Corp with dreams. He came for the paycheck. His wife had passed 2 years ago, and with no college degree, no fancy resume, and no savings, he took what he could. The night shift. Mopping marble floors in buildings where men wore suits that cost more than his rent. But James was different from other men. He carried in his heart the raw ache of loss, and in his arms. Every evening when the school day ended, he carried his daughter, Sophie. Sophie was Alina's age, but unlike Alina, Sophie was full of questions, endless laughter, and curiosity that made her teachers adore her and also quietly despair. She talked to everyone, but her favorite thing was waiting in the corner of the executive lounge while her dad cleaned, whispering made-up stories to herself. Or at least that's what everyone thought. What they didn't know was that someone else was always listening, from a room nearby. Alina. The mansion had become too suffocating. Adrian, desperate for results, had brought Alina into the Kessler building, hoping the change of environment, the energy, the exposure, might do something. Her private room on the 48th floor, complete with security and special assistants, became another gilded cage. But every afternoon, she heard something different. A voice. Not one talking to her. But around her. Near her. Alive. Funny. Bright. Sophie. Alina didn't know her name. But she clung to her words like a drowning child clings to driftwood. Sophie spoke of dragons and rocket ships, of janitor heroes and missing cookies, of invisible friends and real monsters. Alina began to lean forward just a little in her chair when the voice floated through. No one noticed. Then, one day, the impossible happened. James had been working late. Sophie had dozed off in the small lounge nearby. The office was nearly empty. And Alina's caretaker had stepped out for a phone call. That's when James walked past and saw the door ajar. He peeked inside. And froze. There she was. The girl from the tabloids. The girl everyone said was unreachable. But James didn't see a mystery. He saw a child. A lonely, beautiful child with eyes that didn't follow sound, but a face that carried the weight of knowing. He didn't say anything. He just smiled and softly said, "You know, sometimes, people don't talk not because they can't, but because no one ever said the right thing." Then he left. The next day, he came again. This time, with Sophie. And Sophie, being herself, marched into the room before anyone could stop her and said, "You're the girl who listens to my stories. Wanna hear the one about the time my daddy made a spaceship out of a trash can?" James turned pale. But Alina turned her head. Slightly. Toward the sound. It was the first time she'd reacted to someone her own age. That night, James was called in. Not for discipline, but for a private meeting with the CEO himself. Adrian Kessler looked tired. desperate, and confused. "What did you do?" he demanded. James shrugged. "I didn't try to fix her. I just saw her." Kessler stared at him, this man with oil stains on his boots and a child waiting outside with glitter in her hair. "You'll stay. Every day. With your daughter. Do whatever you did. Just don't stop." What followed in the next few weeks would change everything. Sophie and Alina began spending more time together. Sophie did all the talking. And Alina, now seated closer to the edge of her couch, began to smile, then giggle silently, and once, she reached out and touched Sophie's sleeve. James noticed something else too. When he cleaned nearby and hummed old lullabies he used to sing to his wife, Alina would tilt her head. Her fingers tapped in rhythm. She felt it. She recognized comfort. One evening, as James was tucking Sophie's scarf around her neck, Alina suddenly asked, in a voice barely above a whisper, "Did your wife like the stars too?" James turned. It was the first word she'd spoken in years. He felt his heart stop. He looked at her, not the way the world had, but the way he always had. He whispered, "She did. But she would have loved to meet you more." Tears rolled silently down Alina's cheeks. She smiled. And from that moment, everything changed.